Hey smart buddies, let's get back to school and know more with the smart slate. Today we'll know more about ambitransitive verbs versus ergative verbs. But how to identify or how to know the difference between ambitransitive verbs and ergative verbs? To understand that, we must first understand intransitive verbs, transitive verbs. Then we can differentiate between ergative verbs and ambitransitive verbs. So let's begin. The very first thing we'll understand is transitive verbs. So transitive verb is usually the sum up of noun, verb and noun. Instead of noun at times we use pronoun. So we can say noun or pronoun plus verb plus noun. That is NVN is the basic formula. So using that formula we'll frame few sentences. Jaden plays piano. Jaden noun plays verb. Piano is noun. Maria completed the homework. Or mom cooks the food. So plays, completed and cooks are the transitive verbs. Now in case of intransitive verbs, it is just noun and verb. There is no noun after the verb again. The whistle blew, they are playing, or Jessica disappeared. Now what I can understand using looking at these sentences is transitive verbs is the sum up of subject, verb and object, and intransitive verb is the sum up of subject and verb. Thomas rang the bell rang. Now these two sentences have used the same verb. Thomas is the subject, rang is the verb, the bell is the object. Similarly, the bell is the subject in case of intransitive verb and rang is the verb. So when you use a same verb or the similar verb is used in transitive way as well as intransitive way, then that verb is known as ergative verb or an ambitransitive verb. Like Robbin flies a kite. So kite has become the subject of an intransitive verb. Kite flies. Farmer grows wheat or wheat grows well. So these are ergative or ambitransitive verbs. Then what is the difference if you say it's an ergative or ambitransitive verb? Yes, there's a difference. So let us understand the difference between ergative and ambitransitive verbs. Ergative verbs identifies the doer of an action as the object rather than the subject of a verb, whereas ambitransitive verbs may or may not require a direct object. The subject of an intransitive verb behaves like the object of a transitive verb. That is, when you change the voice, you can change it into active into passive voice, but the cause and effect relation is still unchanged. It is not possible in case of ambitransitive verbs because you do not have a direct object. At times you may have, but at times you do not have. So usually in ambitransitive verbs, the change of voice is not possible. Let us understand with the help of an example. So the subject of an intransitive verb behaves like the object of a transitive verb. Robin flies a kite. Kite is the object which becomes the subject in case of intransitive verb. So your flies is your ergative as well as flies is your transitive as well as an intransitive verb. So it is an ergative verb because it is used transitively as well as intransitively. A verb whose subject when intransitive corresponds to its direct object when transitive. Now we already know that transitive verbs have objects, whereas intransitive verbs just have subject. There is no object. So your Robin flies a kite and kite flies. Kite is the object of a transitive verb, is now the subject of an intransitive verb. So when you can shuffle the sentence in such a way that object turns to a subject, then that particular verb and the verb is still same and the meaning is still same, then it is an ergative verb. Few more examples. Farmers grow wheat or wheat grows well. Bob shook my world or my world shook. So when you change the active voice into passive voice and the cause and effect relation is still unchanged, in this example you'll understand respect your seniors or seniors should be respected. The meaning is still same, cause and effect relation is unchanged, and the object is the subject from transitive to intransitive. So this is how ergative verbs are formed or used. So we are clear with the ergative verbs, that is grow, shook, and respect. Now we'll understand ambitransitive verbs. These are the verbs which may or may not require a direct object. I studied thoroughly. In this particular sentence, there is no object, whereas what I can understand here is such verbs are adverbial in nature. When you use the verb intransitively, usually because you do not have any object, then the verb which you use intransitively is of adverbial nature. That means you have adverbs at the end of the sentence, like farmer grows wheat or wheat grows well. So when you say wheat grows well, well is your adverb. I studied thoroughly, thoroughly is the adverb. But if I say I studied the case thoroughly, in this particular sentence I have used the object, which is direct. But in the absence of the direct object, the sentence still has meaning. That means it makes sense. Then such verbs are ambitransitive verbs. Few more examples. Bella rejected formally, or Bella rejected the proposal formally. Mr. Gabriel explained very well, or Mr. Gabriel explained the case very well. They listened carefully, or they listened him carefully. So when you do not have the direct objects like the proposal, the case, or him, the sentence still makes sense. But when you add them, it still makes sense. So there is no change in the meaning or the sense. Just as the different case here is you have the object. Then such verbs are ambitransitive verbs. Rejected, explained, and listened. So we are clear with the ambitransitive verbs. Here is the sentence which says, Henry watched the movie with curiosity. So here there is an object which is direct. So it is a transitive verb. I can understand Henry watched the movie with curiosity. So it is an ergative verb. How it is an ergative verb? Because the same sentence can be used intransitively. Henry watched with curiosity. So it is an ambitransitive verb as well. Now how it is an ambitransitive verb? Because watched is used with object and without object. With object in case of ergative verb, without object in case of ambitransitive verb. So watched is an ergative as well as an ambitransitive verb. Because here there is an absence of direct object. And it is an intransitive verb because there is no object in case of intransitive verbs. So all ergative verbs are ambitransitive verbs, but not all ambitransitive verbs are ergative verbs. Like the movie has to be watched with curiosity. If you change the sentence or the voice in the sentence, object and subject can be changed. That means you can replace object, you can shuffle the positions and make the sentence again, just like we do in our ergative verbs. So it is an ergative verbs, and all ergative verbs are ambitransitive verbs. But it is not in the case where all ergative verbs are ambitransitive verbs. So we'll understand it with the help of an example where we change the voice of an ergative verb. He explores new places every year. So here, he explores new places every year. New places is the object. Now in the voice, what we do is we make object as the subject. So new places are explored every year. And in ambitransitive verbs, usually they are intransitive in nature and they do not have any object. So there is no object here. But in case of a sentence where here it is written he explores new places every year, new places is the object. But if I look at the second sentence, new places are explored every year, there is no object. So I can say that object of a transitive verb is now the subject of an intransitive verb. That means this ergative verb is acting as an ambitransitive verb as well. So all ergative verbs are ambitransitive verbs. But not all ambitransitive verbs are ergative verbs. How? David elaborated graphically. David communicates slowly. David waited till dawn. What we understand in these sentences is there is no object. When there is no object, can you change the voice? That means in the ergative verbs, what we do is object is used as the subject. Is it possible? No. So, intransitive verbs are adverbial in nature. We all know that. If I look at another sentence, like here graphically dawn and slowly argue till dawn. So these are the adverbs. But if I look at the sentence, the plane crashed. There's no adverb. But still the plane crash is the sentence. Is it an ergative verb? They invested already. There's no object. So when you do not have object, the verbs are ambitransitive verbs. But is it possible that an ambitransitive verb is also an ergative verb? No. How to identify it? Because when you cannot change the object into subject, that means ambitransitive verb is not an ergative verb. So all ergative verbs are ambitransitive verbs, but not all ambitransitive verbs are ergative verbs. So we'll look at the example again to just sum up what we have learned so far. I cook well. Here it is an ambitransitive verb because it is used without object. I cook the food well. The food is the object, so yes, it's an ergative verb. The food cooked. The subject and object got changed, that means we have changed the voice. Still the sentence makes sense, so it is an ergative verb that I can confirm, but it is also an ambitransitive verb. Whereas in the sentence, Dinah disappeared. Can I change the sentence, object and subject in the sentence? No. So, ergative verbs are ambitransitive verbs, but ambitransitive verbs are not ergative verbs. Remember, not all ambitransitive verbs are ergative verbs. There are chances where few ambitransitive verbs may act as ergative verbs depending upon the pattern of writing sentence and its usage in a language. The next example is Tom started early. Tom started the show early. It is with object. The show started. So started is ergative as well as ambitransitive. He laughed loudly. It is just an ambitransitive verb. So all ambitransitive verbs are not ergative verbs. Cook and started are ergative plus ambitransitive verbs, whereas disappeared and laughed are just ambitransitive verbs and not ergative verbs. Hopefully you understood the difference between ergative and ambitransitive verbs. So it's time for you all to practice. Drill yourselves and answer the verbs which is ergative or ambitransitive. Here are the few sentences. You have to list 5 ergative verbs and ambitransitive verbs in the comment section. Try to make sentences and comment in the comment section. Thank you. Keep learning, keep growing, and stay subscribed.